To this computer. Okay. Hi, and welcome to our learning table for She's the Boss group. We have today one of the women who has been so supportive and is sponsoring our She's the Boss live stream show as well, the lovely Eve John from Boardroom 51, who specializes in helping people get on boards, particularly women. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if it's okay, I it is recording. Great. I am going to hand it over to you and I'm going to put a spotlight on you, which I've just discovered I can do, which makes you and everything you share the main part of it.
Fantastic.
So go for it. Thank you so much
Excellent.
for this, Eve.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think there is, and we all know there's a huge untapped market out there for women to be on boards. And I think there's a couple of things that I want to talk about today, particularly around some of the big myths that we see. Some of them are organizational, perpetrated. Some of them are industries, and some of them we need to, as women, need to take a bit of a look at ourselves as well as to how we're doing with boards. But I think the one thing that I always say to women when they talk about wanting to be on a board, um, there's a lot of challenges that women actually have, and I just want to make it really, really clear with people that it's absolutely okay to want to be on a board because you want to achieve the prestige and the potential of having a high profile board position. Like that is okay to want that.
I think that's
Okay.
really good that you're saying that because I reckon that is probably the secret reason for a whole lot of women.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, there is prestige that comes with it for
A
sure.
100%, 100%. It's also about you can also be on a board because you want to earn a potential income and you want to leverage your expertise. You can also want to be on a board because you want to make a difference to the community, the country, and in some cases, the work in the world. You could also be on a board because you want to receive stock options or equity in a startup or a company that you believe in. And it's perfectly okay to be on a board because you want to boost your career. It's great for your personal branding. It's really good for expanding your corporate network and adding value to the jobs that you do. Um, for me, the one thing that I often find women, it's that the one that we don't talk about. It's the little, perhaps a little bit taboo, but it's about being recognized and respected by your peers and seen as the expert that you really are. Now, Jules, I know you're the expert about visibility with women. And the goings on and behind the scenes of that. And that's something that I have to deal with women. I started Boardroom 51, and it's called Boardroom 51 because I actually don't want women, like, I don't believe that we should have an equal part. I think we should have the ownership and have the 51%. So we
Love
should be in
that.
the majority. Okay. And I'll talk about why in a minute, but that's why I call the business Boardroom 51, because I really do think that we do need to have that majority, because when women are in on boards, profits are higher, products are better, staff retention is a lot better. The sustainability from an environmental perspective to the amount of money that's put back into community is actually higher as well. So there's a lot of benefits for having these for having us on board. So I just want to make sure, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, that's just
Fill
come
the
up
screen.
perfectly.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite quotes. And we all know Ruth, who was a Supreme Court judge over in America, passed away several years ago. But one of my favorite quotes from her is that women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. We are the exception. Across the company landscape here in Australia, we are the exception to the rule. There's still several companies that are on the ASX top 200 that do not have any women on the board. Um, Jules and I, and you guys might have heard Jules and I talk about this. There's a couple of the top 100 companies. There's about 30 that have. There's about 30 women across these boards. Now, George, do you just want to do because you did the deep dive on this, and I use I
Oh,
use
do you?
yeah, I use your research and I credit you. So do you just want to share what you found out when you did the deep
So
dive on
okay, so it was the ASX 200 were crowing in 2021 about the fact that they had just reached 30% women on boards. But I actually went into that. So that's 60 women. Of those 60 companies out of the 200, of those 60, 39 had only one woman on their board. And then when you go into the deep dive, you find that it is a lot of them, it's the same women on multiple boards. So actually, I did a poll around that time, and I've still got the results last year saying I actually feel it's unfair to only have one woman on a board. I think that there should be at least two so that they have an ally, because one woman with seven guys or 10 guys makes it very, very hard to get yourself across. But yeah, so the stats are appalling, much worse than they look on the surface, and it is definitely time for change.
100%. Now, I do. I in a previous life used to write press releases, and I'm really good at skewing the stats to show what I want, and I think that's something that when you do deep dive, you can figure that out. But I think for me, I'm very much around working with sharp and strategic women to get their first board role, and because I can be, I'm quite picky with the clients that I want to take on. If a woman says to me that, oh, I just want to be on a board because I want to give back, I'm like, that's kind of not good enough for me. Because it needs to be for something more. You've got to have something guttural. You've got to have something that you're passionate about or that you really think that you can change. And there's different types of boards. There's different levels of boards. There's different sizes of companies and organizations that boards support. So just that you want to give back is really not going to be enough, because if you don't have a little bit of skin in the game, if you're not getting paid, if you're not passionate about it, if you don't have the skills, you can to just sit back and cruise by. So that's something that I think is really important. So I've designed a program for Boardroom 51, and it works around elevating women from being the undervalued to an in-demand expert, from going from being empowered, from going from overwhelmed to outstanding, because it can be a lot at the start of being on a board, and it can be quite overwhelming. It's like starting a whole new job. You've got to learn the processes and the people, and then being an expert and going from rookie to maven. But one thing that you'll see on the screen there is that I've got valued, impactful, and paid. Now, we've talked about this again, Jules, is that primarily the women that are on boards that are not for profit. Primarily, they are board roles that are not paid as well. I think that that's okay. If you're going to be on a board that is not paid, that's okay. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to put your heart and soul into it. And even joke around with my kids, like, I don't half-ass anything. If I'm going to ask something, I'm putting my whole ass into it. So I'm currently on a board for a not-for-profit, but I'm also on a board for a for-profit company, because what I really want the reframe to be is, and across the line as well, we shouldn't be expected to do not-for-profit work for a for-profit company. And I think a lot of us do that. We do give away things for free. We work with people for free. We let people pick our brains for free, and then they go and make money out of that. So yes, I'm all about getting women on boards. I don't generally start by encouraging women to get on a free board where they're not paid. I encourage them to get on a board where they actually are paid, because as a mentor of mine told me many, many years ago, the best way to help the poor is to not be one of them. And so I've learned so much of being on paid boards, because I feel the expectation is higher of what I've got to do, and I'm held to more account. I've then been able to take that across to my not-for-profit boards. So one of my very unpopular stances is that your first board should always be a paid board, not a not-for-profit board for a not-for-profit organization where you're not actually getting paid. Doesn't mean that you have to be paid the, $40,000, but your
That's just what
expenses.
I was going to say, Eve. What sort of amount should you be asking for then if you feel that women should be paid? I mean, is it like $500 a month or is it
As a bare minimum,
okay?
because you kind of work it out by hours. So, for the board that I was the chair of, where I was going to a lot of the events, I was doing, shareholder management. So I was talking to shareholders, customers, community members. I was spending a lot of time out there. It was a lot of my personal branding as well that I was leveraging. So I should be compensated for that. For the not-for-profit board that I worked on, I was very passionate. It was about mental health, for free access for mental health support for kids in my local area. Now I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. I would like to think that if any of their friends needed support, this organization was helping them. So I wasn't I wasn't getting paid in the monetary sense, but it was the time saved or the heartache saved of knowing that this was able to be out there. But I was doing a board meeting and a sub committee meeting, so I was probably doing 5 or 6 hours a month. And I wasn't doing high decision making, I wasn't involved in a lot of that. So the amount of time that you need to put into it is one thing, and then your level of expertise. So when I was doing when I was the chair of the bank, that's a $330 million business. I was using my digital marketing expertise. I was using my cybersecurity expertise. I was using my copywriting. So skills and a lot of things that I was paid for in my normal day-to-day job. So when I say zero, it doesn't mean that you have to start at the 40,000, but you need to have something so that you can feel the value of it as well. Also, too, that way, somewhere around the way, if you get paid a little bit for it, you can claim a lot of things on your tax deduction. But that's not financial advice. That's something to talk to your accountant about. Um, I fell into being on a board because of the work that I'd done in the community. This is just some of the PR. This is some of the local PR and stuff that I've done in Melbourne and Victoria. That centre photo there with me with all of the CFAs was when we handed out $250,000 to all of the CFAs in my local area, regardless of whether that was a volunteer or non-volunteer run CFA. It meant that every single CFA in my council area was able to purchase ground penetrating radar. So whether they were supported by the metropolitan fire associations or not, that was probably one of my proudest moments. Another one was when we were able to set up childcare at childcare and support at one of the local courts, so that if you're going to court as a survivor of domestic violence and you needed to take your children with you, that you could actually take them with you and they could be cared for by a child care professional as well. So these are some of the things that being on a board's enabled me to be able to do. But the current landscape really within Australia on boards pretty much is this picture. So you've got a couple of women there, couple of men. You've got your power suit with your everyone's got their jackets on. It's the average age of a board member in Australia is 60 years old, 60 and 1 month. That's the average age of a board member. Of those, they say about 70% are actually retired or semi-retired professionals, because there is this bit of a myth that you need to be retired or you need to have 50 years of experience to be able to be on a board. So the challenge is for me that as a woman under 50, when I started on a board, I was under 40. It can be really hard to be taken seriously by people that are, double your age as well. So that's one of the challenges, and that's one of the things that I actually work through with women is particularly with I call it the triad. So white, Anglo, male over the age of 60 generally have a background in finance, accounting, law, or what was the other one? I'd have to double check that. But it's very much the same, and business, very much
or
the same
professional services? Well,
professional
don't they
services.
want, though, young people as, I mean, I guess it depends what the organization is, but to be getting those perspectives of, the younger generations as well.
Well, I guess when you're talking about different types of boards, there's, it can depend on the type of board that you're going for. So, there's some of these large
Yeah, like
organizations.
the ASX 200. I understand that they probably don't want to have a whole lot of 20-year-olds, although they should.
No, no. But also too, I think it's now we're starting to realize that age isn't the only factor.
Mm.
It's a combination of your experience, your expertise. um Age really doesn't come into it. There's the percentage of people under the age of 30 on a board is under 5%. And a lot of those are boards that are like small startup companies as well. So that's where the founder perhaps potentially has some not friends, colleagues, or people that he knows or she knows that they've sort of brought along with them. So there's a few things that we come to think of as well. And I'll talk a little bit about going through going for even now after 6 years, I wouldn't be going for BHP. Firstly, because that has absolutely no interest to me, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But I don't have that experience. I don't want that pressure.
No, but that's where Bronwyn is working with BHP and has
Yeah,
been for
right.
many, many, many years. So
Yeah,
that's where
yeah.
she should be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think and that's the whole thing. And it's, we all sort of we talk to people and we're like, what the hell? What's going on? So I think one of the big things that I come across, one of the industry myths that are quite perpetuated, is that you must have board experience, and that's not actually true. What I believe that you need is board level experience. So perhaps you don't have Bronwyn, who's doing some amazing things in her business, and I know she does have board experience, but board level experience is this. So she's presenting, she's doing risk contracts, she's tendering, she's making high risk decisions. She might not have done that for the board, but she's got that equivalent. Transferable skills is something that's really important. That's where I spend a lot of time with my clients, is looking at what have you already done and how does that equate to board level experience. So I started really doing workshops about 2 years ago, when I had a friend of mine who at the time was the HR manager for MYOB International. And the challenge was, she was like, "Oh, I really want to apply to be on an advisory board for this a large university." And she said, "But I don't think I've got the experience." And I said, "So you're head of a large international company. How many staff do they have? 300. And you're the head of HR, sorry, 3,000. Head of HR for a company that has 3,000 staff, and you don't think you've got the like." So, "But I don't have boardroom experience." I said, "Yes, but you present. You do all of these other things." So looking at your transferable skills are really important, because you don't have to have been on a board, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you have that board level of experience. The other common myth, and I get into trouble a lot for this one, is that you must have a qualification. Being a non-executive director isn't like being an accountant or a chiropractor or a teacher or an electrician. You do not have to have a qualification. So there's some really, really great courses out there. And there's some not so great courses out there. There's some really great courses out there. However, for some people, the cost of doing that course is cost prohibitive as well. Some of those courses are traditionally you chalk and talk or just presenting and listening with an exam at the end. Again, that's not for everybody. A lot of those courses are based around, the legalities and the aspects, which are really important that you know, but you do not need to be able to quote, different parts of the act. And it's very much, I often sort of compare it a little bit to when you started a new company and they make you do the HR, they make you do the OH&S training. It's important that you know it. It's important that you have a basic understanding of it. It's important that you know where to access the information to confirm that you're actually on the right track. But most of the time, it is very much looking at, your common sense, ethics, values, morals, and that nobody expects you to be able to quote to them the OC Health and Safety Act of 1996, Section 1.2, in regards to wet puddles on the floor.
Yeah.
So this again is something that's very interesting, as well. And I think there's a couple of really, really good places that run great courses. And I'm very jealous of their marketing because they're so well marketed that it's brilliant. But I think it's everybody nowadays, there's different ways that people want to learn and focus. I'd love to tell you that, women are treated exactly the same as men when we go into company boardrooms, so that these organizations and these courses are, perfect for everybody, but they aren't under the AQTF training framework, and they're very different across the board. There's no actual qualification that you do this and that you are officially a director.
Yeah.
As well. So that's a big one that we often find people have as well. So the other one that I always get a bit of a giggle out of is that you must know the right people. It's you don't have to, your dad doesn't need to play golf with the chairman of the board for particular companies
Although it
anymore.
helps.
Yeah. There's lots of different ways, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, because there's a lot of different ways of being able to get in front of people, and networking is, and I know that's something that you're just spectacular at, Jules. Networking is something that can really, really work, but you don't need to go broad and have everybody know that you're actually looking for a broad role. I'm a little bit more laser focused and like laser targeted, rather than going, hey everybody, I'm looking for this. I'll put myself in front of people in more of a strategic way, so that I end up I make it competition free for myself.
Right.
And I'll share that with you a little bit of a little bit later. But there's, Jules, what are some of the other things that you've heard, some of the other headspace hooligans, or some of the things that you often hear women say, oh, I'd love to be on a board, but
I think for a lot of people, I don't, is this on? That I've come across, it's how do I get on a board?
yep, cool.
It's not, so they're not thinking, okay, these are my skill sets and these are the companies that are around in that industry that I'd approach about it. It's more about how do I find out about it? And I know for me, the big thing is governance, because I'm
Yep.
not good at that. And
Yep.
and I've been on a couple of boards and it's very serious.
Yeah, and it is. I think actually having run your own business makes governance a lot easier, because you're more accountable.
Yeah.
And governance is a high level of accountability, and making sure that you are crossing, that you're doing the right thing. So I think quite often women that I've worked with that have had their own business, or have a more structured, if they've had to work where they've got to do a lot of reporting as well.
Well, that's why I feel like there's a really obvious kind of finance is an obvious stream up that way. Maybe IT, but you don't. I don't know, but I don't hear a lot of marketing people that get onto boards. Um, yeah, but I don't know. It's like, how do you find the boards that are looking for people? And I guess part of that is, the old being part of the old boys network if you're a man. But how do
Yeah.
you do that as a woman?
Yeah. one of the things I'll put a pin in that because I'm going to answer that question for you.
Okay.
One of the things is that I'm not good enough. I don't know this. I don't know that. I don't know this. I don't know that. It's really reframing and thinking about what you actually do know. That's going to make is going to make a big difference. But probably the first thing is making some decisions. So I couldn't think of anything worse than being on a board. I think it was sort of like Bronwyn, where she's, I couldn't be on one of those big corporate boards where I've got to go into the city for meetings and we're up 17 stories high and we're going to talk about we've got to take into account the political aspects of what's going on in the world. We've got to take into account environmental aspects of what's going on in the world. That's not my style. So it's really the first thing that you've got to do when you're looking for a board role is make a couple of decisions. And that's the really important thing. Like, what is your seat? What do you want to be known for? And I think it comes down to those transferable skills. So maybe it's not the marketing, people aren't particularly looking for marketing, but communications and comms is a huge thing for boards. Being able to communicate with their shareholders, because that's generally the biggest one that you're dealing with. So many boards struggle with that. They don't have good communication, or they don't understand that they can't just go out and we're doing this. Well, you're only sending out an annual report once a year, but you've decided that you're going to do this. That's where it really sits. So knowing what your skills are and particularly what your unique value is as well. So for you, Jules, I'd be looking at a board that would be, more along the lines of small business, even advisory stuff, but looking along the lines of, who the end customer is. So if it's, business to business makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Because that's your area of expertise.
I don't know whether you're able to see the chat. Bronwyn just posted something saying that a headspace hooligan it's just a not-for-profit. So I don't really need to know all the governance stuff. And I think a lot of parents might start with the parent-child committee at their childcare at their primary school.
Yes. Correct. I actually have I have a whole presentation that I run for some of the local organizations around, that's a great place to start, but you are still responsible. You still need to, put your full ass into it, but also too, it's a great stepping point as well, because it allows you to sort of know what you do and you don't enjoy. I'm not going to be on the finance committee. It's not going to happen.
But what are your thoughts though about advisory boards being a stepping stone? Because
I think they're great.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely great. It allows you to really shine in your area that's an expertise as well. You can come out, you can spotlight, you can hone straight into it as well. But I think one of the big issues that we often see is that people think that they have to tick all of the boxes to be able to do all of the things. You're actually better off to be, it's the old jack of all trades, master of none, right? I had to learn about finance and how to read financial documents, and every company's different. I had a basic understanding, but I had to learn about how we do things. And we all know everyone does things differently. So you need to find something that's a perfect match. And for some people, the advisory board is the perfect match. For some people, doing a government board as well. I know a lot of people that are very high level in mental health space. They're on government boards that are dealing with the mental health space as practical and lived experience experts. So it's looking at what your expertise is and how that's going to work for you. So for me, as a copywriter and as a business owner, majority of my career was selling, women selling to women. So if I was going to be, for example, a cosmetic line, being on a board for a cosmetic line because it's selling to women.
Yeah.
That's my jam.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
But also too, marketing is a big part of that. So it's figuring out what exactly your point of difference is and where you want to sit. You don't need to be able to tick all the boxes. There's some common boxes, and understanding financial documents, understanding communications, understanding, governance and how to assess risks. They're your common themes. And then there's the different pockets. Because if what we often find is if everyone's got the same experience and we're all coming through, we're all female over the age of, over the age of 40, live in Australia, went to university, have children, enjoy a little bit of travel. And there's all these similarities between us, all about empowering women. Quite often we end up in an echo chamber of our own opinion.
Yeah, yeah, you need that diversity, which
You
is, of course,
definitely
what
need
we're
the
all
diversity.
championing.
Exactly. And so when we're talking about diversity on boards, we're not just talking about the tick the box of you
No,
must have a person of color, you must have a woman, you must have a person with a disability. It's also diversity of experience and diversity of expertise
yeah,
as well. Because otherwise you're all just telling each other, great job, pat on the back, and nothing's changing throughout what you're doing. The advisory board is one part of a perfect pathway. I always look at a pathway like a stepping stone, right? So if you were somebody that wanted to get on a board that was paying $60,000-$70,000 a year for their board roles, you kind of still got to start down the bottom and kind of build your way up, right? I think of it like a bit of an apprenticeship. You go in, you do what your expertise is, you learn a little bit. Then you can go to the next level. You do what your
yeah,
expertise is, you take what you've learned, you apply it, put in, but you also learn another thing as well. Because quite often if you go straight to the top, you'll find that you end up if you're applying for roles straight at the top, you don't know how to present yourself that you actually are capable. One of the things that I always find women are doing is waiting and waiting around that the time thing, but also waiting for me stands for who am I to, right? Who am I to apply to be on a board? Who am I to think that I can do this?
yeah,
Because that little, the inner critic is going, well, actually, you don't know, or you're not an accountant, you don't know all about finances. And what if this happens? And what if you embarrass
mm,
yourself? And what about this? And we're like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Now, I know you could talk about self-confidence for days, but this is something that people will say, oh, and like my friend that was working for Maya, waiting because who am I? Who am I to apply for a role? Who am I to, put myself forward? But on the flip side of that, and sort of what I was talking about is that you do need to wait. So if it's your first board role, you're not going to be applying to be on the board of Disney International, but you could be on the board of a toy company here in Australia
yeah,
because there's a lot of them. Okay. So again, it's building that pathway to be able to go, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to end up. And probably for most of us, we haven't really done any career planning, particularly if you've owned your own business or you're working in your own business, you kind of don't career plan that much. So sometimes this is a big step for people working out where is it that I want to be and how am I going to get there? And that's one of the questions that I always ask people. If I could wave my wand and get you on for whatever, what is your dream role? And quite often the dream role is on a not-for-profit for something they're really passionate about. So for the Cancer Council, for Share the Dignity, for, those sort of things that they're really, really passionate about.
yeah,
So we then look at scaling it back. Okay, so if you could achieve that in 4 steps, where are we going to start for that? So if knowing where you want to get to, it's like anything. If you got to know where you're going to get to before you know where your start point is, and then you can build them together. Because if you're
yeah,
just throwing darts at any board role that comes up, you're not going to be able to hit that mark. It's really making sure that you've got that North Star of this is the direction that I want to go in. And I know for me that my goal actually and the plan is to be on by in the next how many I'm just because it's my birthday soon, I just got to work out my years. In the next 12 years, within 12 years, I want to be on 4 boards, paying a certain amount of money each board, 3 boards paid, and one is a philanthropic one where they maybe cover my phone bill or something like that. Like I'm gifting my expertise in my service, but it's something that I'm really, really passionate about.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's so important for people to actually have this map of this is where I am. That the first question you need to ask is where am I? Where am I going to be? What are my steps to actually get there? What's right for me isn't always going to be right for other people as well.
Mm.
So knowing that what you want to work with. If you'd ask 15-year-old me, will you ever work for a financial institution? I would have laughed for a start. But if you told me that I was going to be the chair of a board for a financial institution, I would have thought you were crazy.
And yet, look
Even
at you. Yeah.
10 years ago, I would have thought the same thing, right? Are you crazy? And I don't have the experience. I don't have any banking experience, but I brought other things to the table that, and as this chair role, part of it came with they needed somebody who could be public facing.
Yeah.
So there's some great people on the board. They would rather put hot thumbtacks in their eyes than stand up in front of 500 people and give out money.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm like, just give us a microphone. I don't need cue cards. I got this.
Yeah.
So making sure that you know where your expertise is something that's really important too. But you've got to be able to really map it out and take that first step. And I think that we often think that, all board roles are going to be advertised. And only about 30% of available board roles are actually advertised. So sometimes they're on LinkedIn or they're on Seek. But there's a couple of different ways, and I don't have time to go into all of them, but the one way that I become competitor free when I'm applying for a board role is, firstly, I don't always look at what board roles are out there, because I feel that you're going up against 100, 200, 300 competitors, applicants anyway. So I know exactly the types of boards that I want to be on. I reverse engineered exactly the smaller versions of those boards. And the one thing that I do, and this is something that I always teach people, and I even teach, I work a lot with young women who are looking to get their first job out of school or out of university. And the one thing that we do is we will Google and see if the company, if it's a public company, what their annual report says.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll actually, that way we can do their values and their missions and spit it back out them. But what I would do, say if you rang me, Jules, and said, "Oh, Eve, listen, I was speaking to Bronwyn, and she told me that ABC company is looking for a board member. They want someone who can, has a bit of experience with event management, some philanthropic, that has a little bit of not-for-profit work and knows tendering." And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. What I would do is I would actually go to pull up their annual general report, and I would go and look at all of the current directors and see if I had any mutual connections, if I wanted to add them on LinkedIn. This is, of course, after, and I spruik this all the time, and I know you're always, cleaning up your LinkedIn. I know you just had your retreat about building your
Oh,
LinkedIn
yes.
profile. So that's a really important thing. So making sure you cleaned up all of your real estate, because nobody wants to go on your Facebook page and see that you were at your niece's hens night doing body shots.
But Eve,
Um,
would you approach a company and say, "I'd like to be on your board. When there's another position available, can you let me know, or can I be in the running?"
I would go straight to the chair.
But that's how you do it. You'd actually ask to be on a waiting list or something,
I
as
would
opposed
submit.
to waiting for when you hear on the grapevine that they're
Yep.
looking.
I would go straight to the chair. A couple of reasons. Um, Firstly, your chair is the person who, it's like anything. If I rang you and said, "Listen, Jules, I've got someone that is I think would be real. I know you're looking at doing this with your business. I think I know you want to I'm just going to make some stuff up. So I know you want to work on sales in your business. I know this woman called Fran. She's amazing. Let me tell you a little bit more about her. You're going to be a
Yeah.
bit more open rather than if Fran's pitching to you directly.
Yeah,
And
that's why I wondered whether it's worth going to them directly or whether you just kind of warm them up a little bit first or go in
I
indirectly.
always warm them up. And the way that I do that, and this is something that I teach my clients, is, it's kind of, you don't just send them your resume, and get off and starting. It's very much, it's sales, it's building relationships. It's, I
Okay.
know that you are the chair of this particular board. I'm really impressed with this, this, and this. Just casual reach out, and then you
Yeah,
can
okay.
build and build. But there's been times when I've just gone, rip that band-aid off, and we've sent a cover letter and a resume across to the boards. Because a lot of companies too, if you once you know who's once you've got this list of who you want to work with, and with my clients, we build a list of 10 companies. And what we
Yeah.
do is we look at when their annual reports are out, we look at when their annual general meeting is as well, if they're public, because directors are up for, can be nominated before an annual general meeting.
Yeah,
And
normally.
if you're if you're letting if you've applied directly to the board, then technically the board or the chairperson or the secretary, they're the one, and they've, the board thought this is a great candidate. They're the ones putting you forward.
Yeah.
Your chances of getting on the board with the shareholders agreeing to you getting on that board, if the board's put you forward, are
Yeah.
phenomenally higher.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that, and I think that's where my marketing brain comes into action as well. It's like, how are you going to become different? So you need to know what your unique value is. You need to know what you're going to bring to the board. And for some of us, I think the biggest challenge for so many of my clients is getting their board resume done, because you can't just have the same resume that you have if you're applying for a role. It has to be, it's quite tailored. It's a little
And
bit
if
unique.
you're a business owner, you probably haven't written a resume in 30 years.
Oh my goodness, the amount of women that come to me and they're like, oh, and then you go through and you talk to them and they're like, oh, I forgot I did that absolutely amazing thing. I forgot I
Yeah,
did that.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. So for a lot of clients that I'm working with, I'll work with them for about 6 weeks, drilling down, um, and getting them to do all those activities so that we can actually build their resume, because most of the time they're numb to their own knowledge and they've actually
Yeah.
forgotten what they've done.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, and they
Classic
go, oh,
woman, I think.
yeah. Oh, I forgot I did this. So you can't just bang it out in a day, right? Because otherwise you've got to go back because everyone's forgotten. We've got to keep pressing through it. Um, but the important thing for me, and the way that I I always think about it, is that the chair is generally the person who is, they're in a leadership role for a reason. So if you can connect with them, if you can find out a little bit like them, a little bit about them, and connect with them in a different sort of way. Whenever we're writing, if I'm writing a letter for a client who's submitting interested in becoming a board member of that company, we will go through and look at the annual reports, look at what the chair's actually written. We will go through and find as much about that chairperson as we possibly can online, so that we can compliment them on things that that they've done previously. We can, build that relationship a little bit as well. But we can then, and I guess this is the copywriter in me, we'll then use their words and phrases in
Yes.
our application, because it will tweak, it'll ping the brain, and they'll be like, oh, they
That's
sounding
classic sales strategy as well. Use the same language, same tone of voice, same body
100%.
language. Yeah,
And
great.
that's, and that's what I think people forget, is it's still, so many people that are board members that I know are thinking, gee, like, and it's they're really good at selling themselves. And
Yeah,
for women, this is the thing that we kind of suck at,
yeah,
right? Because we know now women will only apply for a role if they tick 100% of the boxes, whereas men
yeah,
will do it at 60%. Oh, I hit 60%. The other thing is as well that women will go and do training or do some of the, the really good courses that are out there. They'll go and do those before they apply for a board role. A man will go and sit on 2 or 3 boards, go, oh, crap, I need to learn a little bit more about this. I don't want to ask anybody, so I'll go and do some training as well. So I think really that the 3 things to remember when you're looking at moving, getting your first board role or your 20th board role. Well, actually, I'll touch on that one. First board role or all board roles, you need to know where you want to end up so you can reverse engineer. Okay. You need to have a stepping stone of this is where I want to go. So this is how I need to get there. You need to be strategic. Second of all, you need to know what your unique talents are. I always think you got to double down on your talent, right? So we just had the Olympics, right? And the Chinese, you might have noticed this, but the Chinese always do really, really well in table tennis. The Chinese in the 1950s in the Olympics, what they would do is they would get someone who was amazingly left-handed and then an individual that was amazingly right-handed. And the other countries would do this. But say, Jules, I'm the left-handed player and you're the right-handed player.
Yeah.
They would spend more time trying to get you as a right-handed player to play well with your left and me as a left-handed player to play well with my right.
Right.
The Chinese, the Olympic committees would go, no, you're the right side, so we're going to double down on making you the best right-handed player in the world, and go, you're the left side, so we're going to make you the best left side in the world. So they would double down on your strength, not your weakness.
Yeah.
Because that can end up being watered down as well. So doubling down on your strength. So for me, online marketing is a strength. With online marketing comes data security and ethics as well, with all the information that we can get from you as marketers.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of stuff around ethics, cybersecurity, and AI, right? Because they all tie in, but only in that marketing context.
Yeah.
But then on paper, people look and go, oh my God, she knows about, she's done policies for this, and this from that area and that perspective as well. So that's a really important thing. And the third thing is to track everything. I have clients, spreadsheets for clients where I'm like, okay, how did your board meeting go? Great. What did you bring to the table? Excellent. How many policies did you review? What was the outcome of that policy? So once they've even done their first meeting, they're recording so that when they want to go next level, they've got that as well. So for those of us that are already on a board or on advisory or already sort of got the foot in the door, you need to start tracking everything that you do so that you've got it ready for when you want to up level, because that's something that we forget. We are so numb to our own knowledge, right, that we forget that we even know how to do that. So for me, the amount of press releases that I've written over my career is phenomenal. But if someone said, could you write me a press release? I'd be like, oh my God, I'd have to think about it, right? But it becomes so innate that we don't value it. And particularly as women, we don't value something that we are talented in. Unless we've worked our absolute booties off, we're like, I'm just good at that. I'm just good at marketing. Well, I got good at it. I had a little bit of talent, but skill's going to get you over the line every single day. So making sure that you can step, and that's why I talk about, having your unique advantage and knowing exactly what your skills are is what's going to end up giving you, getting you in that chair role, which for most people, that should actually be your end game. Is at the end of the day, I want to be on a board like this that's paying me this, and I want to be the chair. Because that is the position for me, wanting to make a difference. That comes when I'm the chair of an organization or a government department. If I'm on the board for, the government department of, there was a board role that came up recently for the Committee for Juvenile Justice, right? And they needed a chair. Now, without going on a tangent, I do believe they should be raising the legal age of, conviction and all this. So that's where I can make my most difference is on that.
Right.
But I'm not ready to get there. And I still got bills to pay and other things to do along the line.
Yeah.
as well. So for me, it's about knowing where I'm going to make the most impact, and being on the doing the community board, knowing that we get to give out when we increased our profit. We're one thing off being the best. We're best in the state, one off being the best in Australia. Knowing that we can, because of the work that I do and the work that we've cleared for the staff to be able to do, that the little kinder, we can give them $7,000 in a grant, which means that they can get their their new playground with their interactive things, and the space for kids with low vision. I tell you what, there's nothing better than going and getting a homemade cookie that a 3-year-old's made and helped do, and a cup of tea, and knowing that you've been part of something that's done
It's
this.
made a difference.
Or walking into Bunnings and seeing your something that you've been involved in on the shelf, and you're like, might just get myself a sausage to celebrate. So being on a
True.
board is, but I do that. Initially, I got on a board because I thought I was going to look really good on my resume.
Right.
And it's definitely opened doors for me. It's been financial. I've learned a lot. Um, so I just want to clarify that it is perfectly fine to be on a board to further your career, to be recognized as the professional that you are, to be validated in your expertise. Um, but when you get on the board, you can have those feelings and want to do it for that, but you still got to throw your full ass into it.
And I
And
think for having now been on 2 boards myself and realized that I am actually not great at boards and that's not where I want to be,
yep,
is that you've got to try it to know one way or the other
yep,
whether it is your jam or not, or whether there's other ways you can contribute. We
100%.
definitely need more women on it. Should we just open this up
Yeah, I'd love
to
to.
everyone? I think I might just stop the recording so we can talk privately.
Sure,
So
of course.
thank you so much, Eve. I'll
My
just say
pleasure.
that was
Thank you for the
really
I'll have a
amazing.
quick read of the chat. I'm not so good at when I'm presenting